It was 2 o'clock in the morning at a 24-hour clinic on the forgotten side of town. The kind of place where the fluorescent lights buzzed like dying insects and people came when they had nowhere else to go. Hyman Ironvance was stepping out after his monthly parole check-in when he heard the gasp, breathless, desperate, cutting through the thick night air. Iron's instincts kicked in immediately. 23 years riding with the Hells Angels had taught him to recognize real terror. This wasn't panic. This was prey being hunted. He turned toward the sound, his leather vest with its patches marking him as a member of one of the most feared motorcycle clubs in 3 states. But before he could reach his Harley, a pregnant woman stumbled from the shadows, moving as fast as her swollen belly would allow. She was maybe mid-20s, blonde hair falling loose from a ponytail, green dress stretched tight across 7 months of pregnancy, and she was running straight toward him, toward the most dangerous-looking man in the parking lot. Please tell them you're my husband," she gasped, her trembling hands grabbing his tattooed forearm with surprising strength. Iron froze. In his entire life, no one had ever asked him to be anything close to a husband. He was the guy bouncers called when things got out of control. The guy even other bikers gave extra room. The guy who'd failed his little brother when it mattered most. But this woman was shaking so violently he could feel it through his leather jacket, and her eyes held the kind of fear that couldn't be faked. If this moment gripped you, drop a comment saying, "Not today, Laverne." This story is about to take a turn no one saw coming. If you believe there are still good people left in the world, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us share more stories like this. Also, comment below with where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Then Iron saw him. A man in his mid-30s emerged from the clinic side entrance, scanning the parking lot with practiced efficiency. He wore pressed slacks and an expensive polo shirt, looked completely respectable except for the cold possession in his eyes as they swept across the empty spaces, hunting. The woman pressed herself against Iron's side, one protective hand on her belly trembling. "He's not my husband," she whispered, voice breaking. "He thinks this baby is his. He won't let me go. Please don't let him take me." Iron didn't need to hear another word. He shifted his body, placing himself between the woman and the approaching predator, his 6'3" frame creating a wall of leather, muscle, and ink. The man's eyes landed on them, and for a moment, he stopped. Calculating. Weighing his options against the patches on Iron's vest, against the scarred knuckles and the look that said Iron had walked through fire and come out the other side. Then the man started walking over, his face transforming into a smile that never touched his eyes, the kind of smile snakes would wear if they could. "Tammy, sweetheart," the man said, voice smooth as oil over gravel. "You scared me half to death. Come on, let's get you home." Iron felt the woman, Tammy, flinch against his side. Her fingernails dug into his arm hard enough to hurt. 23 years of reading predators told him everything he needed to know about this man in the expensive polo shirt. The smile was practiced. The concern was performance. The threat underneath was real as a loaded gun. "This is my wife," Iron said, his voice dropping to the register that made parole officers nervous and rival clubs think twice. "You got business with her, you go through me." Laverne's smile flickered. His eyes traveled from Iron's face to the patches on his vest. The colors that meant brotherhood, that meant backup was always one phone call away, that meant this wouldn't be as easy as cornering a pregnant woman alone in a parking lot at 2 in the morning. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Laverne said, taking a half step back while trying to maintain the appearance of control. "Tammy and I have known each other for years. We're practically family." "Funny." Iron crossed his arms, making himself even bigger. "My wife never mentioned you." The mask slipped. Just for a second, but Iron saw it, the flash of rage, the tightening around Laverne's eyes, the way his hand moved toward his jacket pocket before stopping. This man was used to getting what he wanted. Used to women who couldn't say no because he'd made sure they had no other options. "Right." Laverne's voice went cold, the pretense of concern evaporating. "Well, when your wife comes to her senses and remembers where she actually lives, she knows where to find me." He looked past Iron, directly at Tammy. "This isn't over, Tammy. You know you can't hide from me. I know where you work. I know where your mother lives. I know everything." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Then Laverne turned and walked to a black Mercedes parked in the shadows, expensive enough to pay rent on 3 apartments. He didn't peel out or make a scene. Predators like him didn't need to. The message was delivered. He drove away slowly, deliberately, like a man who had all the time in the world. The moment his taillights disappeared, Tammy's legs gave out. Iron caught her before she hit the pavement, her whole body shaking with the kind of adrenaline crash that comes after running on pure terror. "Thank you," she sobbed against his chest. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know who else. I saw your bike and I just thought maybe, God, I'm sorry." Iron stood there, this crying pregnant woman in his arms, and felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like chains. The smart move was to make sure she was okay, maybe call her a cab, then get on his bike and ride away from whatever mess she was tangled in. He'd done his time. Paid his dues. He didn't owe the world anything, especially not a stranger who'd pulled him into something that screamed complications. But through the clinic's window, he caught movement, a woman in scrubs watching them with a kind of careful attention that meant she'd seen the whole thing. Their eyes met for a moment. The nurse gave a slight nod, then gestured toward the entrance. An invitation. Or maybe a warning. Lester's voice echoed in Iron's head, as clear as if his brother was standing right there. "You gonna walk away again, H? That worked out so well last time?" "Come on," Iron said quietly, helping Tammy straighten up. "Let's get you somewhere safe." He knew, even as he said it, that somewhere safe didn't exist anymore. Not for her. Not until someone dealt with Laverne. And against every instinct that told him to protect himself first, Iron realized he couldn't just walk away. Not this time. The all-night diner smelled like burnt coffee and decades of grease. Iron guided Tammy into a corner booth where he could watch the door, old habits dying hard. The waitress, name tag reading Dolores, brought water without being asked, her eyes lingering on Tammy's tear-streaked face before moving away with the discretion of someone who'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. "Talk," Iron said, not unkindly. "Start from the beginning." Tammy wrapped both hands around the water glass like it might anchor her to something solid. "His name was Michael. My boyfriend. He died 3 months ago, construction accident. Fell from scaffolding." Her voice cracked. "I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after the funeral." Iron did the math in his head. 7 months pregnant. Boyfriend dead for 3. The timeline fit. Laverne was my ex. We broke up almost a year ago because he was. She stopped, swallowed hard. He was controlling. Obsessive. But he won't accept this baby isn't his. He's convinced I'm lying, that Michael never existed, that I'm trying to steal his legacy. She laughed, a bitter sound. As if I'd want anything from him. Why not go to the cops? I did. Tammy's hands shook. He has documentation. Loans I never asked for that somehow have my signature. Emails I never sent. He's made it look like I'm unstable, like I'm trying to scam him. And he knows people, cops, judges. He told me if I kept pushing, I'd lose the baby. That he'd make sure I was declared unfit. Iron recognized the playbook. Isolate. Document. Control. Make the victim look crazy so no one believes them when they finally scream for help. He'd seen it before, back when Lester was studying social work, talking about patterns of abuse over cheap beer and dreams of making a difference. "I wasn't there when he needed me," Iron said, the words coming out before he could stop them. "My brother. 5 years ago. He got jumped outside a bar. I was supposed to meet him but got held up at the clubhouse." He stared at his scarred knuckles. "By the time I showed up, he was already gone. So I'm not good at this protection thing. Fair warning." Tammy looked at him with something that might have been understanding. "You're here now," she said softly. That's more than anyone else has been. My friends stopped calling after Laverne started his campaign. My family thinks I'm making drama. You're the first person who's actually stood between me and him. Help her, H. Lester's voice came through clear as a bell, the way it always did when Iron was at a crossroads. Don't let her be me. Don't let her be the one you couldn't save. Iron looked at this pregnant woman with nowhere else to go, and saw his brother bleeding out on cold pavement. Saw every moment he'd been too late, too slow, too wrapped up in his own world to notice someone drowning right in front of him. Okay, he said, making a decision that would change everything. Then we make sure Laverne can't touch you. Tell me everything. Dawn broke gray and cold as Iron pulled his Harley up to a modest house on the east side. Maud, the nurse from the clinic, had appeared at their booth around 4 a.m. with an offer that surprised him, a safe place to stay, no questions asked. She'd seen enough of Laverne's work to know what they were dealing with. Inside, Maud's living room smelled like lavender and old books. Tammy sat on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders while Iron made coffee in the kitchen, listening as the full scope of Laverne's web finally came to light. He started with small loans, Tammy said, her voice steadier now that daylight had arrived. After Michael died, I was behind on rent. Laverne showed up with cash, said he wanted to help, no strings. I was desperate, so I took it. She wrapped her arms around her belly. Then there were more loans. Groceries. Doctor's bills. Each one documented, notarized, signed. Except I don't remember signing half of them. Forgery, Maud said quietly from the doorway. Probably. But they look real enough that no one believes me. Tammy's hands shook. And he documented everything else. Every time I cried, every time I got upset about Michael, every mood swing from the pregnancy. He filmed it, recorded it, made it look like I was having breakdowns. Everyone thinks I'm unstable. My mother won't even return my calls. Iron set down his coffee cup harder than intended. Classic predator behavior. Isolate the victim, control the narrative, make them seem unreliable so no one helps when they scream. He spent the morning digging. Made calls to people who owed him favors, used connections most citizens didn't have access to. What he found made his blood run cold. Laverne Hutchins operated a loan business called Second Chance Financial Services. On paper, it helped struggling women get back on their feet. In reality, it was loan sharking wrapped in a humanitarian bow. High interest rates buried in fine print. Debts that multiplied faster than they could be paid. Women trapped with no way out. But it was the death records that made Iron's hands clench into fists. 3 women who'd owed Laverne money had died in the past 4 years. Melissa Grant fell downstairs, 7 months pregnant. Andrea Cole, car accident, found with brake lines mysteriously cut. Sarah Chun, house fire, locked door she supposedly locked herself. All 3 had life insurance policies. All 3 named Laverne as the beneficiary through some obscure clause in their loan agreements. Combined payout, over $1.5 million. Iron pulled up Tammy's loan documents that Maud had helped retrieve from her apartment. There it was, buried on page 17 in 8-point font. In the event of the borrower's death, any outstanding debts would be satisfied through the borrower's life insurance policy, with Laverne Hutchins named as primary beneficiary. The policy was worth $750,000. He's not trying to get you back, Iron said, walking into the living room where Tammy was finally sleeping. Maud looked up from her laptop, saw his face, and her expression went pale. What did you find? 3 dead women. All pregnant. All in debt to Laverne. All died in accidents, right around their due dates. He pulled up the photos on his phone. He's not obsessed with her. He's waiting for the baby to arrive so the policy pays out maximum value. Then he's going to kill her and make it look like an accident. Maud's hand went to her mouth. Oh my God. There was another one, about 2 years ago. Pregnant woman, terrified of him. She came to the clinic 3 times, and I could see the bruises she tried to hide. Her voice cracked. She fell downstairs 3 weeks later. Lost the baby. Died 2 days after that. That makes 4, Iron said. 4 women dead. How many more are trapped in his web right now? They stared at each other, the weight of it settling like lead in the room. This wasn't just about saving Tammy anymore. This was about stopping a serial killer who'd figured out how to make murder profitable. Lester's voice whispered in Iron's head, "So what are you going to do about it, H?" For the first time in 5 years, Iron had an answer. Maud disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a cardboard file box, the kind that accumulates in closets and garages, holding things too important to throw away but too painful to look at regularly. She set it on the coffee table with a heaviness that spoke of carried guilt. Her name was Jennifer Brooks, Maud said, opening the box to reveal medical files, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes. 26 years old. 7 months pregnant when she first came to the clinic. Said she was clumsy, kept running into things. Maud's voice was flat, clinical, the way people talk when emotion would break them. But I've been a nurse for 20 years. I know the difference between clumsy and beaten. Iron picked up a photo, a young woman with dark hair and a smile that didn't reach her frightened eyes. The similarity to Tammy was eerie. Same age. Same desperation. Laverne brought her in twice, played the concerned boyfriend. Said she was unstable, prone to falls, that the pregnancy was making her emotional. Maud's hands trembled as she sorted through papers. The third time she came alone. Begged me to help her disappear. I gave her numbers for shelters, domestic violence hotlines, tried to convince her to file a police report. What happened? Tammy asked, though her face said she already knew. 3 weeks later, she fell down the stairs in her apartment building. Lost the baby. Massive internal bleeding. Maud's voice cracked. She died 2 days later. The police ruled it an accident. Laverne collected on her life insurance, $400,000. I went to the detective handling the case, told him about the bruises, about her fear. He said there was no evidence of foul play. She pulled out a leather-bound notebook, pages filled with dates, names, observations. After that, I started documenting. Every woman who came through our clinic with that same look in her eyes. Every suspicious injury, every controlling partner, every case that felt wrong. She looked at Iron. I have 15 cases here spanning 6 years. 4 of them are dead. The others disappeared or stopped coming. And I have no proof of anything except my own paranoia and a stack of medical observations that mean nothing in court. Iron understood the weight she'd been carrying. The guilt of knowing something was wrong but being powerless to stop it. He'd lived with that weight for 5 years. The memory hit him without warning. Lester's funeral, rain falling like the world was crying, Iron standing at the grave thinking if he just left the clubhouse 15 minutes earlier, if he just checked his phone one more time, if he'd just been there when his brother needed him. The priest had talked about God's plan and eternal rest, but all Iron heard was the echo of his own failure. I couldn't save her, Maud said, pulling Iron back to the present. I couldn't save any of them. But maybe we can save you, Tammy. Tammy looked between them, the tattooed biker haunted by his brother's ghost and the nurse who'd been fighting a losing battle against a monster no one else could see. An unlikely alliance bound by shared guilt and the desperate need for redemption. You can't change the past, Iron, Maud said, as if reading his mind. None of us can. But we can change what happens next. Iron thought about Lester, about Jennifer Brooks, about the 3 other women whose names he now knew. About all the times he'd been too late, too slow, too wrapped up in his own pain to see someone drowning right in front of him. Not this time. Then we need a plan, Iron said. Because Laverne's not going to stop. He's got too much invested, too much to lose if Tammy talks. He looked at Maud's documentation. We need proof he can't explain away. We need to make him show his hand. How? Tammy asked. Iron's smile was cold as winter steel. We make him think he's won. And then we bury him with his own arrogance. Lester's voice whispered approval. Now you're thinking, H. Now you're finally thinking. The knock came just before 9, sharp and authoritative, the kind that made innocent people nervous and guilty ones sweat. Maud was in the kitchen making tea when she heard it, and something in that sound made her hand freeze over the kettle. Through the front window, she saw the police cruiser parked at the curb, its presence like a period at the end of a sentence nobody wanted to finish. Tammy appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face gone the color of old snow. He found me. Iron moved to the window, his body already calculating angles and exits the way it had been trained to do in places where survival depended on geometry. When he saw who stood beside the uniformed officer, his jaw tightened. Laverne Hicks. The man on Maud's porch wore his money like armor. Tailored coat, leather gloves, the kind of watch that cost more than most people made in 6 months. But it was his smile that marked him as dangerous, that easy curve of lips that never reached his eyes. He looked like someone who'd learned to weaponize charm the way other men learned to throw punches. Maud opened the door before they could knock again. Years of dealing with hospital administrators had taught her how to meet power without flinching. Mrs. Patterson? The officer spoke first, young enough that his uniform still looked like a costume he hadn't quite grown into. I'm Officer Brennan. We're looking for Tamara Hicks. On what grounds? Maud's voice could have frozen water. Laverne stepped forward, all concern and manufactured worry. My wife is having a mental health crisis. I have documentation from her therapist indicating she's a danger to herself. He produced a folder, papers rustling with false authority. She's stolen money from our accounts, made wild accusations, stopped taking her medication. I'm not on medication, Tammy said from behind Maud, her voice thin as paper. I've never been on medication. See? Laverne's voice dripped sympathy. The paranoia, the denial, it's all part of the pattern. Dr. Simmons can confirm. Dr. Simmons, who you pay, Tammy said, and now her voice was rising, panic threading through like wire pulled too tight. Dr. Simmons, who you threatened when I told him about the bruises. Iron moved into the doorway, and something shifted in the air. Officer Brennan's hand drifted toward his belt, recognition flickering across his face like a match struck in darkness. Iron Vance. Laverne's smile widened. Heard you were out. Trying to stay clean, I understand. Good for you. He glanced at the officer, then back at Iron. Be a shame if you got involved in something messy. Parole violation for interfering with a police matter, that sort of thing. You'd be back inside before Christmas. Tammy's breathing had gone shallow and rapid, her hands trembling as she gripped the doorframe. The panic attack hit her like a wave, chest tight, vision narrowing to a pinpoint. She tried to speak but couldn't find air, couldn't find words, couldn't find anything but the crushing weight of her own ribs. You see. Laverne gestured to her like she was evidence. This is exactly what her therapist documented. The instability, the episodes. I'm a physician. Maud's voice cut through the performance like a scalpel. And what I see is a woman having an anxiety attack triggered by the presence of her abuser. Officer Brennan, unless you have a warrant or immediate cause, this constitutes harassment. The young officer hesitated, caught between Laverne's money and Maud's authority. In that hesitation, a decision was made. We'll be back, Laverne said softly. With proper documentation. His eyes found Iron. Stay out of this, Vance. You can't protect her. All you'll do is destroy yourself trying. After they left, the house felt smaller, the walls pressing in like a closing fist. Iron's phone rang an hour later. Laverne's voice poured through like poison. She's mine, Vance. Back off or I'll make sure you go back inside. And she'll have her accident anyway. The graveyard was empty at midnight, just Iron and the dead and the cold that made his breath visible in the dark. He'd ridden here on instinct, the bike finding its way like it remembered the route even when he tried to forget. Lester's headstone was simple granite, the letters already softening with 2 years of weather. Lester James Vance. Beloved son and brother. He tried to make things better. Iron sat on the frozen ground, his back against the stone like he used to sit against Lester's bedroom door when they were kids, talking through the wood when things got bad in the house. Got a problem, Les? His voice sounded strange in the silence, like speaking in a church. There's this woman. Man's gonna kill her if I don't do something. And I know exactly how to stop him. One night, one conversation with my fists, problem solved. The wind moved through bare branches, a sound like water over stones. But that's not the answer, is it? Iron's laugh was bitter. You'd have some other way. Some smart way, some legal way. You were always the one with the plans, the books, the future. He touched the cold granite. Social work degree. You were gonna save people with paperwork and therapy and all that soft stuff I never understood. He remembered Lester in the kitchen 3 years ago, books spread across the table, underlining passages about trauma-informed care and conflict resolution. Iron had been getting ready for the gym, wrapping his hands, and Lester had looked up with that expression he got, half frustration, half love. Not everything gets fixed with fists, H. Most things do, in my experience. That's because you stop counting after the fight. You don't see what breaks that you can't fix by hitting it again. Iron closed his eyes and he could see his brother so clearly it hurt. 23 years old, skinny, too smart for his own good, alive in a way that made you believe the world might actually get better. I failed you. The words came out rough. You needed me to be better, and I was just what I always was. But in his mind, in that place where Lester still lived and breathed and argued, his brother's voice came clear. You think you failed me. But I never needed you to be perfect, H. I needed you to try. To keep trying even when it's hard, even when the easy answer is right there in your fists. Iron opened his eyes. The graveyard was still empty, still cold. Lester was still dead. But something had shifted, some weight redistributing itself across his shoulders. He pulled out his phone, stared at it for a long moment, then dialed. Vance. Marcus Webb's voice was thick with sleep and suspicion. It's midnight. This better be. I need to tell you something, Iron said. And I need your help. Silence on the other end, but it was the kind of silence that meant listening. I need you to know I'm not violating parole. But I need you to know what I'm involved in, and I need someone to know I'm trying to do this right. 20 minutes later, sitting in his parole officer's kitchen with bad coffee getting cold between them, Iron finished the story. Webb sat quiet for a long time, his face unreadable in the dim light over the stove. Webb had known Lester, had talked to him once when Iron was inside, some program about family support for inmates. Lester had that effect on people, made them want to help even when they didn't have to. You violate parole, you're done, Webb said finally. Back inside, no appeals, no second chances. You understand that? Yes, sir. But if you do this right. Webb poured his coffee down the sink. I didn't hear anything tonight. My phone was off. I was asleep. He looked at Iron hard. Do it right, Vance. The way your brother would have wanted. The dining room table had become a war room by 1 in the afternoon, papers spreading across its surface like evidence of a crime that hadn't quite been named yet. Maud worked the phone with the efficiency of someone who'd spent 40 years navigating hospital bureaucracy, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she cross-referenced names and dates. Mrs. Chen? This is Dr. Maud Patterson. I'm calling about your daughter, Michelle. Her voice softened in that way medical professionals learn, the tone that says I know this hurts but we have to look at it anyway. I need to ask you about the circumstances of her death. Iron stood by the window, his own phone pressed to his ear, talking to Big Tommy from the club. Yeah, I know it's a weird ask. But you remember any women coming around with rich boyfriends who got too rough? Last 5 years or so. He listened, his jaw working. Laverne Hicks. Yeah, that's him. Anyone else mention the name? Tammy sat at the table with a blank notebook in front of her, pen in hand, staring at the empty page like it might swallow her whole. Her other hand rested on her belly, feeling the baby move, small flutters that reminded her why she was doing this, why she couldn't just run and keep running. "Write it down," Maud said gently, covering the phone receiver. "All of it. Dates if you remember them. Don't worry about making it perfect." So Tammy wrote. The first time he'd grabbed her wrist hard enough to leave marks, then apologized with diamonds. The time he'd pushed her down the stairs and convinced the ER doctor she was clumsy. The therapist he'd paid to document her instability whenever she pushed back. The way he'd isolated her from friends, from family, from anyone who might notice the pattern. The insurance policy she'd found in his desk drawer 3 months ago, $2 million, accidental death, purchased through a broker named Vincent Cale who operated out of a strip mall office with bars on the windows. By 3 o'clock, they had names. Michelle Chun, 28, fell from a balcony. Sarah Brennan, 31, carbon monoxide poisoning in her garage. Jessica Torres, 26, drove her car into a lake. All ruled accidents. All dated men with money before they died. All had insurance policies purchased through Vincent Cale. And there were more. Iron's connections at the club led them to 4 women currently trapped in the same web. Different men, same pattern, same fear in their voices when he asked the right questions. Women who tried to leave and found their bank accounts frozen, their families threatened, their options narrowing to nothing. "It's a network," Maud said, fitting pieces together the way she used to solve diagnostic puzzles. These men know each other. They share information, tactics. That's why Laverne was so confident. He's done this before, and he knows others who have too. Iron's phone buzzed. A text from one of the women he'd contacted. "Vincent Cale is having a party next Friday. All the men will be there. The ones who hurt us." But Laverne wasn't waiting for next Friday. He was circling closer, a shark that had smelled blood. Iron spotted his Mercedes twice that afternoon, once outside Maud's house, once when they drove to get copies made at the library. The message was clear: "I'm watching. I know where you are." Tammy's credit card stopped working at 4 o'clock. By 5, her bank account showed a balance of 0, funds transferred by her authorized account manager Laverne, who she'd stupidly added to her accounts when he'd convinced her it was what married couples did. "He's cutting off my escape routes," she said, voice hollow. "Making sure I have nowhere to run." At 6, Maud's phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She put it on speaker. "Dr. Patterson." Laverne's voice filled the kitchen like smoke. "I admire what you're trying to do. Really. But you're interfering in a private family matter. And Iron, I know you're there. You're violating the terms of your parole by associating with a fugitive from psychiatric care." "I'm not a fugitive," Tammy said, her voice stronger than she felt. "The police seem to think otherwise. I have a judge signing a 72-hour hold as we speak." A pause, and in it they could hear his smile. "But we can resolve this. All of this. Meet me at the warehouse on 5th Street. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone, Tammy. Just you and me, we'll talk this through like adults. And if I don't, then everyone you care about pays. Starting with the good doctor's medical license. I have friends on the state board. And Iron goes back to prison for parole violation. And your baby." He let the silence finish the threat. The line went dead. Tammy was 32 weeks pregnant, her belly tight and round with new life. Laverne was giving them 24 hours. And the warehouse on 5th Street was where bodies got found, not where problems got solved. The warehouse on 5th Street had been dying for years, windows broken like missing teeth, graffiti layering the walls in archaeological strata of decay. Iron's bike growled into silence outside, and for a moment he sat there in the dark, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. He was early. 11:30. The kind of early that meant scouting, planning, staying ahead of the trap he knew was waiting. But the trap had already sprung. He found them on the 2nd floor, the old office space where loan sharks used to run their operations before the building got condemned. Laverne stood in the center of the room like a man on a stage, and Tammy was beside him, wrist caught in his grip, her face pale and streaked with tears. "Right on time," Laverne said, though Iron was 30 minutes early. "Well, almost." "Let her go." Iron's voice came out flat, the tone he'd learned in places where emotion got you killed. "Simple exchange, Iron. Her freedom for yours." Laverne smiled that smile that never touched his eyes. "I have documentation that puts you back in prison. Video of you violating parole, associating with a fugitive, making threats. Very convincing stuff. You walk away right now, she comes with me, everybody lives." "Everybody except me," Tammy said, and there was something new in her voice. Not hope exactly, but the absence of surrender. "Well." Laverne's grip tightened on her wrist. "Eventually." In the shadows near the broken window, something moved. Iron caught it in his peripheral vision, a shape that resolved into Maud Patterson holding her phone up, recording. She met his eyes across the darkness and nodded once. Laverne was still talking, the way men like him always did, the words spilling out like he couldn't help himself. "You think you're the first to try this? Michelle Chen's boyfriend tried to save her too. Sarah Brennan's cousin. Jessica Torres had a whole family trying to protect her." He laughed, and the sound echoed in the empty space. "They all thought they were heroes. But the system protects people like me, Iron. Always has." "How many?" Iron asked, buying time, letting Maud's phone capture every word. "5 before Tammy. Each one worth at least $500,000 in insurance. Clean policies, accidental deaths, perfect paper trails." Laverne stroked Tammy's arm and she flinched. "But Tammy's special. 750,000. And that baby she's carrying, that makes her more valuable dead than alive. Double indemnity for deaths during pregnancy. Vincent Cale taught me that one." "I'm not your property," Tammy said, and this time she yanked her arm hard enough that Laverne had to grab tighter to hold her. Something shifted in his face, the mask slipping to show what lived underneath. He pulled a gun from his coat pocket. Small, chrome, the kind of weapon that looked decorative until it put holes in people. "You were always going to die, sweetheart. Question is whether your biker friend joins you." He pointed the gun at Tammy's belly. "Or maybe I start with what you care about most." Iron's body knew what to do before his mind caught up. 2 years in prison, 6 years before that in underground fighting rings, a lifetime of learning how to hurt people efficiently. He could cross the distance in 3 steps, break Laverne's wrist, take the gun, put 2 round center mass before the man hit the ground. Easy. Simple. Final. And it would put him back inside for the rest of his life. In his head, Lester's voice came clear as a bell. "You don't have to be perfect, H. Just be there. Just try." Iron moved. But not the way Laverne expected, not the way Iron had moved 1,000 times before. He went low and fast, closing distance while staying out of the gun's line of fire. When he reached Laverne, he struck precisely, pressure point on the wrist, nerve cluster that made the fingers spasm open involuntarily. The gun clattered to concrete. Laverne swung wild, trying to connect, and Iron caught his arm, turned it, used the man's own momentum to put him face first against the wall. Controlled. Defensive. The minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat. "Now, Dr. Patterson," Iron said. Maud's voice cut through the dark. 911? "I'm at the warehouse on 5th Street. I have video evidence of attempted murder, assault, and confession to multiple homicides. The perpetrator is currently restrained." Laverne struggled, and Iron held him steady, not hurting him, just keeping him still. Like holding a wild animal that needed to be caged for everyone's safety, including its own. "You can't," Laverne gasped. "I'll destroy you. I'll." "The recording says different," Maud said, stepping into the light, phone still raised. "Every word. Every threat. Every confession." In the distance, sirens started to sing. 3 months changed everything and nothing. Winter had given way to spring. the kind that came late to this part of the world, grudging and cold until suddenly it wasn't. Iron pulled his bike up to the small apartment complex on the east side, killed the engine, and sat there for a moment with a children's book in his jacket pocket. Where the Wild Things Are. Lester's favorite. He'd read it so many times as a kid that their mother had to tape the spine back together twice. The apartment was on the second floor, modest and clean, with plants on the balcony that someone actually watered. Tammy's estranged sister had taken her in after Maud made the first phone call, bridged the gap that 5 years and Laverne's manipulation had created. Family had a way of finding itself again when someone bothered to look. Tammy answered the door with Emma on her hip, 3 months old, all dark eyes and tiny fists, making those sounds babies make that aren't quite words yet.
Tammy looked different.
Lighter somehow, like gravity had been turned down a few degrees.
Iron.
She smiled, the kind that reached her eyes.
Come in.
I just put coffee on. The apartment smelled like formula and hope. Baby things everywhere, a bouncer by the couch, blankets draped over chairs, the organized chaos of new motherhood. Through the window, Iron could see the sister's car pulling into the lot, back from the grocery store. How's she sleeping? Iron asked, because that's what people asked about babies, and he was trying to learn the vocabulary of normal life. Better than me. Tammy sat down, adjusting Emma in her arms. But that's not why I asked you to come.
She took a breath.
I want you to be her godfather. Iron went still.
Tammy.
Not because you saved me, she said quickly. Although you did. But because I know you'll always show up. When it's hard, when it's inconvenient, when it would be easier to walk away, you'll be there. That's who you are. He wanted to argue, to list all the ways he'd failed before, all the reasons he wasn't qualified to be anyone's anything. But Emma made a sound and reached for him, those tiny fingers grasping at air, and Tammy placed the baby in his arms before he could object. She weighed nothing. Everything. Her head fit in his palm, and he held her like she was made of glass and second chances, feeling the warmth of her through the blanket, the trust of something too small to know it should be afraid of scarred knuckles and prison tattoos. Okay, he said, his voice rough. Yeah. Okay. That night he sat at his kitchen table with his wallet open, the old photo of Lester still creased and faded in its slot. Next to it, he placed the new one. Tammy had insisted on taking it, him holding Emma, both of them looking uncertain but present.
2 pictures.
2 kinds of love.
Both permanent.
The graveyard was empty when he got there just before sunset, the way he preferred it. Lester's stone had weathered another season, moss starting to grow in the carved letters. I couldn't save you, brother, Iron said to the granite, to the ground, to whatever part of Lester still listened. I tried and I failed, and I've been running from that for 2 years.
He touched the cold stone.
But maybe you sent her to save me. Maybe that's how it works. We don't get to fix what broke, we just get to choose what we build next. He stood there until the sun dropped below the tree line, painting the sky in shades of fire and forgiveness. I'm not running anymore, he said. His phone rang on the walk back to his bike.
Unknown number.
He almost let it go to voicemail, old habits, old caution. But something made him answer.
Hello.
Is this Iron? A woman's voice, young, frightened, the words tumbling out too fast. Someone at the shelter said you help people like me. Women who need to get away from. I don't know if you're real or if this is crazy, but I'm out of options and he's coming back tonight and I... Stop, Iron said gently. Breathe. Tell me where you are. She gave him an address on the south side. He knew the neighborhood, rough edges, the kind of place where people learned not to ask questions. I can be there in 20 minutes, he said. Pack what matters. Be ready to move. He hung up and stood there in the graveyard for one more moment, looking at Lester's stone in the dying light. Then he swung his leg over the bike, felt the engine roar to life beneath him, and rode toward the call.
Not haunted anymore. Purposeful.
The road unwound before him and the city lights flickered on like stars falling upward, and somewhere in the distance a woman was waiting for someone to show up, to be there, to choose the harder right over the easier wrong. Iron Vance had been a lot of things: fighter, criminal, failure, brother. Now he was learning to be something new, someone who showed up when it mattered. Redemption wasn't erasing what you'd done. It was choosing who you'd be in the moment that counted. Sometimes the scariest men carried the gentlest hearts. And sometimes being someone's hero, even for one night, changed both of your lives forever. The bike's engine sang through the dark, and Iron rode toward whatever came next, no longer running from ghosts but carrying them with him. Lester's voice in his head, Emma's weight still warm in his memory, proof that broken things could be made whole if you were willing to try. He answered the call.
He showed up.
That was enough. You made it to the end. That means something. Maybe you saw yourself in Iron, someone trying to outrun their past, wondering if redemption is even possible when the weight feels too heavy to carry. Maybe you saw yourself in Tammy, trapped in a situation that looks perfect from the outside but feels like drowning on the inside, searching for the courage to save yourself. Or maybe you saw yourself in Lester, the person who believed that broken people deserve second chances, that not everything gets fixed with violence, that showing up matters even when you can't save everyone. Here's what I know: we're all Iron Vance at some point in our lives. We all carry ghosts. We all have moments where the easy answer and the right answer aren't the same thing. We all wonder if we're too broken to be worth fixing. And here's what this story is really about: it's not about one man saving one woman. It's about the choice we make when no one's watching, when doing the right thing costs us everything, when being a hero means not becoming the monster everyone expects. If this story hit you somewhere deep, if it made you think about your own redemption arc or the people in your life who need someone to just show up, I need you to do something for me. Share this episode. Not because I need the algorithm boost, but because someone in your life needs to hear this story right now. That friend who's struggling. That family member trying to escape something. That person convinced they're too far gone to come back. Leave a review. Tell me which moment hit you hardest. Was it Iron holding that baby? Lester's voice from beyond the grave? Tammy finding her strength? Your words help other people find these stories when they need them most.